On a quiet winter afternoon in Grand Rapids, Michigan, the silence of an old two-story home was broken. Not by a scream, but by a smell. A smell so foul, so unnatural, it clawed its way through the floorboards. Thinking it might be sewage or a dead animal, the tenant headed down to the basement. But what he saw at the bottom of the stairs wasn't a pipe or a rat. It was a black tarp, leaking something dark red onto the cold cement floor. He didn't get closer. He didn't call for help. He called 911. What the police found beneath that tarp would unravel one of the most disturbing murder cases in Michigan's history.
This is Cold Radio, the podcast of cases with no ending.
November 29th, 2018. In the biting cold of a Michigan winter, Christine Young sat silently in her car, clutching her phone tightly, her eyes staring blankly at the dark screen. She was waiting for her daughter, Ashley Young, to arrive so they could sign a new lease together. But it was already well past noon, and there had been no word from Ashley. No texts, no calls, no message. At first, Christine tried to stay calm, convincing herself that her daughter had probably overslept or was stuck in traffic. But a mother's intuition gradually grew into a gnawing anxiety, an overwhelming sense that something was terribly wrong, silently unfolding beyond her reach. She couldn't see it, couldn't touch it, only feel it with each heavy breath and the tightening of her heart, gripped by fear. Christine called Ashley's workplace, a bank call center in Kalamazoo. The manager's brief response chilled her blood. Ashley hadn't shown up and hadn't called in. That wasn't like her at all. Ashley had always been punctual and responsible. If something unexpected came up, she would always notify someone, always leave a message. But today, absolute silence. Christine's fear surged like a cold wave rising in her throat. She rushed to the police station, hoping someone would help, that someone would say they'd look for her daughter, that someone would take action right away. Instead, she was met with a gentle yet cruel refusal. Ashley is an adult. She can go wherever she wants. No one has the right to make her notify her family. A legally valid response, but emotionally brutal to a desperate mother. The police refused to open an emergency case. Christine couldn't just sit still. She began investigating on her own, scrolling through old messages, combing through Facebook posts, calling Ashley's close friends to ask when they had last spoken to her, if anyone knew where she might be. And then that name surfaced, like an old knife being dragged from an unhealed wound: Jared Chance. The name left Christine breathless. She had never forgotten him, the man who had betrayed Ashley's trust by breaking into her home in 2013, stealing and selling off her most precious belongings. They had cut ties after that. But in 2017, Jared returned, lamenting his hardships, speaking of loneliness and despair. And like many kind-hearted people, Ashley forgave him, gave him another chance, despite his dark past. Christine never felt at ease with Jared's return, but she knew she couldn't interfere too deeply. Ashley was an adult. She had her own life, her own decisions. And sometimes love makes people blind. Ashley had even told her friends that Jared seemed to have changed, that maybe there was something more than friendship between them, that if he truly loved her, he could become a wonderful, trustworthy man. The clearest evidence of her hope was a short audio clip Christine found on Ashley's phone. Her daughter's voice soft and full of optimism, like someone dreaming of something beautiful. "I know if you were my boyfriend, if you really loved me, you'd be wonderful. I can't wait to see you on Wednesday." Wednesday, November 28th, the last day Ashley was seen. Christine found Jared's number, called him, and left a direct message. "This is Christine Young, Ashley's mother. She went out with you. I need her to contact me. If not, I will report her missing to the police." Jared called back, his voice disturbingly calm. He said they had hung out at Mulligan's Pub and a hookah lounge. Later, Ashley messaged that she had forgotten her phone and went back to retrieve it before going to work. But that detail directly contradicted something Christine knew for certain. Ashley had no work shift that morning. So why did Jared say she did? Was he mistaken? Or was he creating a cover story to hide something? Jared lied so smoothly without a hint of hesitation that it sent chills down Christine's spine. She continued asking around, digging through Facebook comments, until she stumbled across a conversation between Ashley and a close friend. Ashley had mentioned Jared more than usual, talking about recent meetups and long conversations into the night. Christine began to feel truly afraid. There was something between them, more than friendship, less than love, an undefined relationship in which Ashley may have invested more trust than she should have. And now, she was missing. The police still refused to open an emergency file. They demanded concrete evidence, indications of foul play. All Christine had was her intuition, her growing dread. But one thing she knew for sure, Jared was hiding something. And with every passing hour, her daughter could be lying somewhere, alone, cold, hurt, or worse. Jared Chance wasn't yet mentioned in any official reports, hadn't been investigated, wasn't being watched. He was still free, still living in his apartment in Grand Rapids, just a 35-minute drive from Kalamazoo. Meanwhile, no one knew where Ashley was. No one knew what had happened on that fateful night. No one knew if she was still alive. Worse still, no one had the authority to believe Christine, a lone mother fighting to be heard in a system that wouldn't act without clear evidence. But anyone who has ever been a mother would understand, sometimes instinct is stronger than any logic. And in this case, Christine's instincts were right, but no one listened. And you, if today your daughter went missing, and the last person seen with her was a man with a history of theft, drug use, and violence, would you wait for evidence, or trust the fear screaming inside you? 48 hours had passed since Ashley Young went missing, but for Christine, every minute felt like a skipped heartbeat. No message from her daughter, not a single trace. Only one name repeated in her mind like a curse: Jared Chance. Christine was afraid to sleep, afraid to let go of her phone. She called him again, but this time Jared didn't answer. Her voice trembled with fear, with anger, with the dreadful intuition that something horrific was approaching. While the police still hadn't acted, Christine decided to find out what Jared had done on the night of November 28th and the morning of the 29th. According to him, they had gone to a hookah lounge, then to Mulligan's Pub in Grand Rapids, and afterward, they went their separate ways. But he offered no concrete details, no photos, no messages. And most suspicious of all, he said Ashley had lost her phone. Then why were there still messages from her number sent to him afterward? A clear contradiction, one Jared told so smoothly, as if he didn't expect anyone to remember the details, or had forgotten that this mother wouldn't let go of the truth so easily. Christine didn't stop with his story. She tried to access the bar's security footage, going to Mulligan's Pub herself, asking the manager to review the recordings from the night of the 28th. What she saw brought tears to her eyes. Ashley entering the bar, lightly curled hair, winter coat, still smiling, her eyes full of life. She was still that cheerful, open-hearted girl who always tried to see the good in people, even in someone like Jared. But then, there was no footage of Ashley leaving the bar. The recording cut off before she exited, or maybe the camera angle missed it, or someone tampered with it. No one knew. Christine then started reaching out to Jared's friends. One name came up: Demetrius Taylor. Jared told her that Ashley had spoken with Demetrius at the bar that night and that they might have left together. He gave her several phone numbers he claimed belonged to Demetrius, but none of them worked. Some were disconnected, some didn't exist. It felt like Jared was deliberately pulling Christine into a maze with no way out. But she didn't give up. Somehow Christine found the real Demetrius. When she asked him about Ashley, his first reaction was total confusion. He had no idea who she was, had never met her, never even heard of her. To prove it, Demetrius showed Christine a text from Jared, one that made her skin crawl. "Hey, Ashley's mom is going to call you. You have to say you were with her and that you two were just hanging out." Jared was instructing someone to lie, to be a fake witness, to build an alibi. And he did it without hesitation, without remorse. Christine took a photo of the message and brought it to the police. This time, they began to take notice. But they still needed more. They needed what the law requires: physical evidence, tangible clues, a solid reason to request a search warrant for Jared's home. What Christine had, though chilling, still wasn't enough. Sometimes, the world doesn't believe a nightmare until it sees real blood and tears. Until then, it dismisses everything as the hysterics of a desperate mother. Meanwhile, Jared remained eerily calm. He posted random updates on social media, trying to appear uninvolved. He even called the police on the morning of December 2nd with his father, James Chance, claiming that Ashley's family was slandering him, that he was being harassed on Facebook, that he had information but would only share it with a lawyer. When told the police couldn't provide him a lawyer and he'd need to find one himself, Jared grew irritated, got up, and left, leaving investigators confused. No one knew then that just hours later the truth would rise from the ground. Around 4 p.m. on December 2nd, Mario Nelson, a neighbor who lived below Jared's rental unit, called 911 in a panic. He reported a horrible stench coming from the basement. At first, he thought it might be trash or a dead animal. Yes, but when he went down with a flashlight and reached the bottom of the stairs, he saw a large black tarp, edges stained red. The smell, rotting flesh and blood, was overpowering. He backed away, trembling, and called the police. "There's blood leaking from the tarp. I think there's a body. You need to come now." Police arrived on the scene. Stepping into that basement for the first time, they would never forget the overwhelming stench of death decomposing in the dark. They opened the tarp. What lay inside made even seasoned officers retch: a human torso, missing the head, arms, and legs. Just the torso, crudely wrapped in fabric. The scent of dried blood mixed with the basement's cold air clung to every brick, every stair. Mario, shaking, spoke to the officers and pointed upstairs. "Jared lives up there. He's the tenant. A few days ago, he told me if anyone asked, to say I didn't know where he was." Immediately, the house was sealed off. The police established a perimeter. FBI jackets and flashing lights flooded the once quiet neighborhood. Christine, driving to Grand Rapids to confront Jared, was stopped by yellow tape. The police told her a single devastating sentence: "We found a female body in Jared Chance's house." She could only scream, "No, it can't be Ashley. Please tell me it's not my daughter." But deep down, she had known the answer for a long time. Ashley was no longer missing. But the truth they'd uncovered was the worst truth a mother could imagine. And Jared Chance, he was no longer just a suspect. He was the heart of the nightmare. But the most terrifying thing wasn't the body in the basement. It was what was missing: the head, arms, and legs. They weren't there. What had he done with the rest of Ashley? At this point, what do you think he was planning? More hiding? An escape? And more importantly, why, despite the warnings, had no one stopped him sooner? When police entered the upstairs apartment where Jared Chance lived, the air thickened immediately. The silence in the cramped space stifled by the scent of dried blood, harsh cleaning chemicals, and something more sinister that no one could name. They found Jared asleep, as if nothing had happened. He didn't scream, didn't resist, didn't even seem afraid. He simply opened his eyes slowly, looked at the guns and badges pointed at him, then quietly sat up, was handcuffed, and escorted to a police car. The entire way he said nothing, looked at no one, like a man still trapped in a bizarre dream he hadn't woken from. While Jared was being taken to the station, investigators began searching the apartment. Every drawer, every corner, every trace was inspected. And soon they realized the crime had not ended in the basement. On the kitchen floor was a large brown stain, aggressively scrubbed, as though someone had tried and failed to erase blood. In the bathroom, the shower curtain had been removed, chemical droplets still clinging to the tub's edge. Inside the floor vent, they found a small caliber shell casing, .22 caliber, the same type of ammunition Jared once owned, though the weapon itself was missing. From the kitchen, a narrow stairway led to another area. There, police found a large cardboard box. Inside, 2 severed legs without feet, 2 arms missing hands, all wrapped in black garbage bags, stuffed with a hoodie and a pair of blood-soaked boots. On the wall were hurriedly wiped bloodstains, still visible under a UV light like ink marks on white paper. There was no doubt now. Ashley Young had been murdered, dismembered, and her body split into pieces, right there in that apartment. Bank card records from the 48 hours before the torso was discovered showed Jared had purchased rubbing alcohol, rubber gloves, trash bags, and ammonia, a chemical often used to mask the smell of blood. Surveillance footage from Miss Tracy's party store, a nearby convenience store, showed Jared entering, his face pale, arms full of supplies, leaving with a bag only someone planning to conceal a crime would carry. But that wasn't all. Another camera behind the store captured Jared dragging a large black bag toward a public dumpster, walking slowly but deliberately, tossing the bag in, without looking back, without hesitation. Police quickly tracked down that dumpster and found inside a pair of blood-stained pants, Ashley's ID card, and a pair of gloves covered in bodily fluids, the final pieces to confirm the victim's identity, though her head was still missing. One chilling detail was the layout. The kitchen, believed to be the primary crime scene, was only a few steps from the bathtub. This suggested Jared killed Ashley in the kitchen, then dragged her body to the bathroom to dismember it. From the scuff marks, investigators estimated her body was dragged 10 to 15 feet. There were no defensive wounds, no scratches or bruises on her arms or legs, suggesting she was either unconscious or already dead before being moved. But how could they confirm that, when her head, the key to every unanswered question, wasn't in the house? No one dared say it aloud, but every investigator had the same thought. Someone helped Jared hide the rest of her remains. Or Jared had taken them elsewhere to destroy them. Then a new lead emerged. Phone data showed that on the day the torso was discovered, Jared had left Grand Rapids and headed south, to the city of Holland, where his parents, James and Barbara Chance, lived. Police suspected that the rest of Ashley's body may have been taken there, or was still there. On December 4th, an emergency search warrant was issued. Investigators arrived at the Chance residence, hoping to find the missing pieces. They never imagined what they would find would open the door to an even darker tragedy. In the garage, they found a Honda CR-V SUV. Inside the trunk was a small bloodstain. In the house, a bloodied shower curtain was discovered rolled up and hidden behind a laundry cabinet. A large kitchen knife, stained with fresh human tissue, and a pair of gloves, the same type Jared had purchased, were found. When confronted, both James and Barbara refused to speak without legal counsel. But their silence was deafening, replaced by the weight of the undeniable evidence laid out before them. James, once a seasoned police officer, let slip a chilling remark. "I'm glad I'm not the one investigating this. This is too heavy of a case." The statement sent chills through the investigators. What did he know? How much? And for how long? It was now clear this was no longer just the crime of a killer. It was a family covering up a murder. No remorse. No attempt at redemption. Only carefully calculated words, deadly silence. And on the other side, a mother holding on to the last thread of hope that she might find what was left of her daughter to bring her home, to light, to peace. But would Jared Chance ever reveal that truth? Or was he waiting for the day no one had the strength left to ask? On December 4th, 2018, after discovering blood traces and physical evidence at the home of Jared Chance's parents in Holland, Michigan, police brought James and Barbara Chance in for questioning. This time, they hoped to break through the wall of silence surrounding the case. The couple was separated into two different rooms. They started with Barbara, the mother, who appeared more emotionally vulnerable. She entered with a pale face, hands trembling uncontrollably, eyes filled with fear. Her first words were, "I didn't know what to do. I was scared. I didn't kill anyone. I want to help, but I don't know how." The investigator stared at her for a few seconds without speaking, then slid across the table a photo from the crime scene. Bloodied shoes, garbage bags, Ashley Young's incomplete remains. A heavy silence filled the small room. Then Barbara began to talk, slowly, haltingly, and soon, what she revealed stunned the entire investigative team. She confessed that Jared had come to their house in a state of panic, crying hysterically, saying an accident had occurred. He and Ashley had been fooling around, drinking, playing with a gun, when it suddenly went off, the bullet striking Ashley in the face. Barbara emphasized that Ashley had been holding the gun and that Jared had sobbed, saying, "I can't believe this happened. I didn't want to hurt her. I loved her." The investigator asked, "Then why did he dismember her?" Barbara fell silent for a long moment, then whispered, "He said he didn't know what to do. He was scared of going to prison. He thought it was the only way not to get caught." This left part of the team in shock, not because it was unexpected, but because of the sheer coldness of the act. That a mother could hear her son admit to cutting up a girl's body and still let him into her home, hide the evidence, and remain silent, as if nothing had happened. In the other room, James, the father, a former police officer who understood investigative procedures and legal consequences, was far more composed. He denied any involvement in his son's actions. But in an unguarded moment, he slipped. While discussing the gun, he said, "He told me she pointed the gun at her face and pulled the trigger." No, I mean, she was just holding it." The investigator seized on the inconsistency. "How did you know the gun was pointed at her face? Did Jared tell you that?" James sighed, looked confused, and replied, "I'm old. My memory's not good anymore. I don't remember." But everyone in the room knew. He remembered perfectly. He just didn't want to admit it. Both James and Barbara acknowledged they knew Jared had dismembered Ashley, had disposed of part of her body, and brought the rest to their house. But when asked where Ashley's head was, or what had been done with it, both parents fell into sudden silence, staring at the floor. Barbara whispered, "I don't know. I don't want to know. I told Jared not to tell me anything more. I just want this to go away." A simple statement, yet full of complicity, apathy, and the terrifying indifference of people once seen as upstanding members of society. The police understood then Jared would not confess. He had shown this clearly during his initial interrogation. He spoke in meaningless circles, and the moment he was directly asked, "How did Ashley die?" he immediately requested a lawyer, ending the session, refusing to say another word. What was most frightening was not what he said, but what he didn't. He didn't cry. He didn't show anger. He wasn't confused. He just sat there, as if watching a dull movie that had nothing to do with him. Investigators hoped that confronting him with real emotion, with the pain of others, might shake him. So they tried a different approach. They allowed a journalist, Heather Walker, to interview him in jail. She came in the hope of finding a shred of conscience left in him. When asked, "Jared, what happened to Ashley Young?" he only shrugged. "I can't say. I don't know what to say. I'm heartbroken too. But I can't say." Heather showed him a video of Christine, Ashley's mother, sobbing uncontrollably, begging to bring her daughter home, to give her a proper burial. The kind of video that would bring anyone to tears. Except Jared. He watched silently, then nodded faintly, turned his face away, and whispered, "I don't know." Then he stood up, ending the interview. By that point, Jared still hadn't been charged with first-degree murder, because the cause of death couldn't be confirmed without Ashley's head. He was only charged with second-degree murder, dismemberment, concealment of a body, and evidence tampering, a horrific list, but one that still left him a chance at life if the death were ruled an accident. But could an accident really lead someone to saw off a person's hands, feet, head, bury some parts, hide others, lie to police, create fake witnesses, and remain absolutely silent when asked for the truth? And could a mother and father, both once in uniform, sworn to uphold the law, sit calmly in that house, hide a crime, conceal evidence, and then only be sentenced to a few dozen days in jail? What is justice if it can't compel a man to say where the last part of a woman lies? And somewhere, perhaps still buried in the cold earth outside Grand Rapids, Ashley Young's head waits for someone brave enough to speak. On September 9th, 2019, nearly a year after Ashley Young's headless body was found in the cold basement of a Grand Rapids home, the trial of Jared Chance officially began. The courtroom was packed, every eye fixed on the defendant, a man with a pale face, hollow eyes, and a blank expression, as if the entire proceeding had nothing to do with him. On the victim's side of the courtroom, Christine Young sat silently, clutching a small white box, the only thing left of her daughter. Ashley's cremated remains. No head, not whole, just a partial body, returned like lost luggage. Jared was charged with second-degree murder, dismemberment, concealment of a body, and evidence tampering, but not first-degree murder, because Ashley's head was missing, and the exact cause of death could not be determined. This was a legal requirement for the highest charge under Michigan law. Throughout the trial, Jared showed no remorse, no admission of guilt, no reaction to the mounting evidence. Surveillance footage showed him with Ashley in the early hours of November 29th. Other videos captured him buying ammonia, trash bags, and alcohol. Another showed him casually throwing a trash bag into a dumpster behind a store. These, along with photos of a saw, bullet casings, and bloodstains, wove together a single narrative. Ashley had died in his apartment, and he had dismembered, hidden, and attempted to erase every trace of her. Jared's defense attorney claimed it had been an accident, that Jared had panicked and didn't know how to handle the situation. But the prosecutor refused to accept that. In the closing argument, he stood before the jury, held up a saw, and said, "Look at the person next to you. Imagine they suddenly died. If you were innocent, if you had nothing to do with it, could you pick this up and cut off their head, their arms, their legs, and throw their parts away like garbage?" The courtroom fell silent, as though all the air had been sucked out. No one spoke. No one dared to imagine it, because the answer was obvious. No normal person would ever do that. One of the most powerful witnesses was Conrad Chance, Jared's younger brother, who testified that Jared had once pointed a gun at his head and pulled the trigger, without checking if it was loaded. Reckless, dangerous, and threatening. Mario Nelson, the downstairs neighbor who discovered Ashley's remains, recounted a chilling conversation in which Jared once bragged, "If I ever killed someone, I'd know how to clean it up, and I'd never get caught." What once sounded like boasting now stood as clear evidence. Jared had thought about killing before. Maybe he had even planned for it. The trial lasted nearly a month, but the jury needed only 3 hours to reach a verdict. Jared Chance, guilty on all counts. On October 10th, 2019, during sentencing, the judge stood up, looked Jared directly in the eye, and said with unmistakable fury, "You are a monster, without conscience, without compassion, a danger to society, who should never walk free again." Then he delivered the maximum sentence for each charge, totaling 100 to 200 years in prison. No parole, no conditions, and no chance of release until Jared turns 130 years old. Christine sat and listened to every word, every number, but shed no tears. Because to her, justice was still incomplete. Jared was imprisoned, yes, but he had never told the truth. He had never said how Ashley died, why, or where her head was. And for a mother, that was the only truth that truly mattered. In a rare decision, the judge allowed Ashley's family to deliver final statements. One by one, they stood and spoke directly to Jared, who sat with his head bowed, seemingly unaffected. Christine said, "She was my whole world, and you threw her body away like trash. Do you know that if I want to hug my daughter, I have to hug a box? A cold box with no head, no arms, no legs. That's all I have left." Another of Ashley's close friends sobbed, "I wish I could tear you apart like you did to her and throw your pieces down the drain so you'd know what it feels like to be discarded." Each word pierced like a blade, aimed not just at Jared, but also at those who helped cover his crime. And then it was James and Barbara Chance's turn, Jared's parents. But here, justice faltered. Barbara received a lenient sentence. 45 days in jail, but served only 29 days before release. James, despite being a former police officer who hid evidence and misled investigators, was sentenced to 30 days in jail and 1 year of probation, and served just 14 days. Less than 2 weeks for helping cover up one of the most horrific crimes Grand Rapids had ever seen. In a later interview, Christine said, "I lost my daughter forever, and they lost only a few weeks. That's a cheap price for a head I've never been able to bury." And she was right. Ashley wasn't only taken by a monster, but also by adults who stayed silent, who chose to protect the guilty rather than speak the truth. The case closed with Jared Chance buried alive in prison for the rest of his life. But Ashley Young still had no complete grave, no peace. Because the last part of her, the one that held her identity, her soul, her truth, was still missing. Will Jared ever speak? Or will he carry that secret to the grave, leaving a mother holding nothing but ashes, pretending it's a real embrace?